record, share screen, your computer sound. All right, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I was nodding and realized you couldn't see
Can't
me.
see, yeah. All right, we're going to get ready for Module 2, which is all about collective efficacy. Here you have your learning targets for today. I can deepen my understanding of efficacy. I can describe the 4 main sources of collective efficacy. I can name ways in which I can cultivate conditions for collective efficacy in my sphere of impact influences as a Read to Succeed reading coach. So I want you to take a minute to just think about, what is self-efficacy? What is self-efficacy? And we'll use the waterfall protocol. And so once you have your thoughts gathered, you can type them in the chat and wait until I say go before you press enter. So what is self-efficacy? All right, go.
Believing in yourself. Oops. I muted myself. Reflection on what you can do to impact those around you in a positive way. Believing you can accomplish. Being aware of who you are. Your beliefs. Being able to succeed with what you believe in. Self-awareness. Your perception of how well you can accomplish a task.
Awesome. I hear a lot of self-awareness, okay, and beliefs. So now, go ahead, sorry.
Believing in yourself, individual's belief, believing in yourself. Okay.
All right. So now we're getting ready to watch a video. And what I would like for you to do is you watch a short clip of it. I want you to jot down any noticings or any wonderings that you have that you would like to add to your definition, okay? All right.
Self-efficacy theory is a way to...
Can you hear it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What drives some people to put forth a lot of effort and others to simply sit back and not even try? This is Cindy. Cindy has certain beliefs about her own ability to learn and complete goals. These beliefs are very specific to a particular situation in a particular context. For example, suppose Cindy has been asked to create a spreadsheet to track her company's expenses, but she has never created a spreadsheet before. Will she tackle this task with gusto, confident in her ability to learn the software? Or will she approach the task with great anxiety and ultimately fail? Based on a person's belief system, learners will perform in certain ways. A basic principle of self-efficacy is that the higher a person's self-efficacy is, the more they believe they are capable of accomplishing a task. The lower their self-efficacy, the less capable they think they will be. People are less likely to attempt something with their full effort if their self-efficacy is lower for that task, because people tend to only try things that they believe they will be successful in. Self-efficacy is influenced by several factors.
Okay. All right. So I stopped it there because as we get deeper into this, we will kind of talk about all of those different parts. So we'll get back into that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you into a breakout room for about 5 minutes. And while you're in the breakout room, I would like for you to just share your thinking around self-efficacy. Why is thinking around self-efficacy important as you enter into the coaching work? Why is it important? And you could definitely use some of your notes that you've jotted down as we've gotten started. So just talk about why is it important as you enter into your coaching work. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes in there. Okay. All right.
So I'm not in a breakout group.
Hold on. Yep. You're in room 6.
I was in room 8, but they directed me back to this main session.
Okay. Let me see here. Put you in. What's your name? I can't see your face. Sorry.
Natasha.
Okay. Put you in 9. Okay. All right. You had a minute to just talk to a few people about why it's important when you're coaching work. Could I get maybe 1 or 2 people to quickly share?
I just asked, a wondering that I had was, does my own beliefs and self-efficacy, of course, affect others? And I was just talking about, like, having an early childhood background, I have very strong beliefs about early childhood education and things like that. And it doesn't always line up with what somebody in my building may have. And so I have to remember to step back and remember, our beliefs are not the same, but what can I do to try to, influence and be confident in what I do know and strong enough to stand up for that, but also not affect our relationship and not affect the conversations and the communications that we have.
Absolutely. Someone else, you can add to that, or you can tell us what you talked about.
Well, our group, we talked about one of our, Caroline she had a meeting last week, and she had done a lot of research on her topic, what she was going to talk about. She had taught it herself, but then she got in the meeting and was kind of like questioning herself. And I think, and I agree that we do that sometimes. And so our self-efficacy just has to be up there to make our teachers believe in us. And I mean, and we're coaches for a reason. And we do a lot of research, and we've got good ideas, and we just need people to listen to them. So we've got to believe in them too. And that's hard. was hard last year. It's getting easier this year, but it's still hard.
Jennifer or Sandy, would you like to add to that? Because they've been doing this longer than I have, so. Can't hear you, Jennifer. Are you muted?
Now, can you hear me?
I can.
Good Lord have mercy. Today is like Friday the 13th for me. All I was going to say was it never gets easy. You know, that's part of this job. It's a work in progress all the time. And because your faculties, you change, you get new teachers in, new perspectives, all those kinds of things. But I think it's important to build that foundation, but not to forget when somebody new comes in, you got to kind of catch them up on what everybody else has experienced, which sometimes I think we forget about with adults. We just think they can just jump in and know what we're all about. So building that trust and relationships, like we studied last year in Aguilera's book, I think is big with all this.
All right. So I'll give you just a minute to read the definitions on the slide. It's all about collective teacher efficacy. All right, so this is definitely a great segue into talking about teacher efficacy from what Jennifer just shared with us. So let's relate that learning specifically to teachers and to the group of teachers that we work with. And I want you to think about the teachers in your buildings, and looking at teacher efficacy is number 1. Collective efficacy is number 2, and then collective teacher efficacy is number 3. Which one do you see the most of in your building? 1, 2, or 3? You can drop it in the chat.
One, two, two, 3. 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3. 1.
Okay.
3, 3.
All right, we have a mixed group. Okay.
3. I was going to say they were heavy on the 2s, but now we're getting heavy on the 3s.
So as teachers, you are used to controlling most aspects of your classroom, but as a coach, your control level has lessened because unlike children who have to do school, you are working with adults whose decisions sometimes they don't align with best practices, and they are completely in control of their own learning and growing. You have to remember, though collective efficacy isn't influenced by only one person in an organization, it's a collective effort. So when learning about collective efficacy in this segment, keep in mind that you can influence as it relates to building stronger communities functioning at high levels of collective efficacy. This is a diagram of the spheres of control. So we had a discussion earlier around why self-efficacy is important as we work with adult learners. Now I want you to think about collective efficacy. Why is it important? Why do you think collective efficacy is important? And you can just jot that down in your notebook. Why is collective efficacy important? How does it relate to coaching? And if someone wants to unmute, please feel free to unmute and share your thoughts.
I will.
Okay.
Just, well, just thinking about it, when you look at the definition and you see that faculty as a whole, because I put that ours was more of a 2 because everybody has their own kind of thing. And I think a group, you have that, not necessarily select group, but you always have maybe 1 or 2, or I always see there's 1 or 2 that it's not a complete faculty as a whole. And so I think that it relates to me because you do have those 1 or 2 that's not going to believe the same way you do in anything, whether they trust you, whether you have that relationship, no matter what, you're always, or I feel like I have that 1 or 2 that just, I can't get on board for different things. So to have it completely as a whole collective agreement throughout everybody, I think that's where kind of a roadblock comes in.
Okay.
I'm going to read some that they wrote in the chat. Grade levels will work well together and share the same thoughts. This will help coaching when the teachers are all on the same page. Another one says, if the teachers already have a belief they can make a difference, then no matter what comes along, they will take on the challenge, like teaching in a pandemic environment. If a grade level believes their group is capable of doing something, they will become more excited about attacking a task. And another one, collective efficacy has a direct impact on student achievement. Schools or groups should have a common vision in order to positively affect student achievement. When looking at collective efficacy as a coach, it becomes very important because when looking at success or a win for a team, it takes more than 1 or 2 players. It takes a team committed to winning in the success of students.
Student achievement, getting teachers excited about it. If they can get excited about it, then you've won them over.
And I think going back to what Stacy said about how she's got 1 or 2, she can get pretty much everybody on board, but she's got 1 or 2 students that, or not students, but teachers that just refuse to get on board. Sometimes those are the teachers that have the loudest mouth. Not mouth, but you know what I mean? Like sometimes they're the teachers that everybody respects. So if it seems like 1 or 2 teachers, I mean, I hate to use the bad apple thing, but like 1 or 2 bad apples can ruin the whole batch. And I feel like sometimes that's what we're up against. We can have everybody on board, but then what do we do about those 1 or 2 teachers that want to ruin it for everybody and want to tell everybody, don't do this? I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that has that problem, but I do.
I'm with you 110%.
Right. I think we all have them. And it is hard to speak up to them because they are the 2 that's going to be the loudest. And it's not that they're respected more by the other teachers, but it's almost like you don't want to rock the boat, so you don't really want to upset them. So they kind of just
almost like a fear.
Them. Yeah. It's almost like they're afraid of what we're back in high school. Like we got the mean girls or something.
Yeah.
But,
and with us all being new coaches,
Right.
They see us as, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing. They're a brand new coach, so who are they to tell me what to do?
Yes, and that is this teacher's attitude. She's a bully. I mean, she bullies the whole school, and she actually gets away with it, in my opinion. But I even had to go to her room and say, hey, we're having teams meeting. I need you to come. And she said she had forgotten. She did not. But I went to her room and I said, I need you to come. Now, we have established norms, teachers established norms with the PD that we had last week. And so one of the norms, of course, states be on time. And she was flat out not on time. Only one of her team members attended and she did not. So I actually had to go to her room and say, hey, very sweet, of course, having a meeting. Oh, I forgot. I said, well, come on, go with me now. And so she did, but she grumbled and complained the whole way.
And I hope you don't mind.
I laughed. I mean, underneath, I was chuckling. I mean, she was hilarious. I mean, I simply laughed. But I try not to allow her to determine my day because I'm not going to give her that power. I don't give her that permission. So it doesn't matter to me how she behaves. I'm responsible for how I behave. So I just kind of put it under my feet and just keep it moving. Yeah.
I almost feel like you want to sit down and say, do you realize what you're doing? You could make such a big impact on this school if you would see the cup half full instead of half empty. But, you know, that could backfire too.
Yes, I want to jump in here. I think that's why we start with self-efficacy. Okay, it starts with you. Now, it helps if you have a strong principal and leadership team and you all share the same beliefs. That, of course, is important. But we want you as a coach to really grasp your belief system around this and realize that how powerful your position is. And to be confident in that, because what's going to happen is, you know, I've been in education a long time and rarely ever does everyone participate and agree. And so you when you're coaching, you have to really don't let that one person distract you from what you believe that you can do. And I want you to think about this too with collective efficacy. I've worked my whole career in Title I schools and now have Tier 2 and 3 schools that I work with. And one of the things that happens a lot of times in those schools is there is a belief system that these children cannot learn. So kind of put your head as we continue this discussion, think about that. Think about, because I've done these, been through these PowerPoints before. And so I want you to think about maybe your whole, like I've been in a school where my last school that I was in before I took this job, people really thought those children are never going to amount to anything. Those children, they had these beliefs. Well, that needed to change, and I think the school has done a good job of that. But then it also happens in a Tier 1 school when we have children in resource that come into your classroom, because I've been a resource teacher and special ed coordinator, and people may say, well, they're not going to be able to learn. So it happens in little ways and it happens in big ways. But think about that. I hate to take your time, Bettina, but that helps us frame our mind around what's something that everybody can grasp, and that's one of those beliefs.
I want to share what Crystal put a little earlier, but it resonates really well after this conversation. She believed she could, so she did. And then I'm thinking, or she believed she couldn't and she didn't. So, you know, it goes back, like Sandy said, to self first before we can ever move forward with anything else.
So I want you to take about 2 minutes to just look at this chart. And what do you notice? Take about 2 minutes to look at it. And this comes from John Hattie. And you can unmute to share. What do you notice?
I was legit just looking at the same thing that I had printed out. That's crazy.
But what did you notice from it?
Well, you know, the teacher efficacy is 1.57 and 0.40 is 1 year's worth of growth. So children are going to grow much more than 1 year's worth of growth just by having teacher efficacy. I mean, you look down at homework, it's less than a year's worth of growth. That's what I've always believed, that homework is not as effective as other things. Not saying that they don't need a little bit of help or reading at home, doing little things, but I've never been a firm believer in giving tons of homework. Just something, read at home. That's my biggest thing, read at home if you can, because a lot of kids, they even struggle with having books. But yeah, I like that. I think that teachers do lack self-efficacy sometimes because they're unsure of themselves. And I know that I was like that when I first started teaching too. But it's a good thing to point out to the teachers that that one thing can make such a big difference.
Yeah, I think this will be something that'll be great to share with teachers. All right, what else did you all notice? Did you all notice anything else?
I didn't.
I'm sorry. I just kind of wanted to say that, you know, a lot of times we look at parental involvement and we place that so much higher on the pedestal than what it actually is. And according to this chart, collective teacher efficacy weighs much more heavier than parental involvement in student achievement.
That's kind of where I was going with it too, with the not only parental involvement, but home environment and the socioeconomic status, because of the type of school that I am in. You know, it is used so much as I hate to say an excuse by teachers when we look at that achievement, but I think we also need to look at what we can control. And I know we talk about that a lot. You know, what I can't control their socioeconomic status or their home environment or even their parental involvement. As much as I want to try, I can't, the teachers cannot control that. So much, I think, like you said, there's so much pressure put on those things, or so much emphasis when you look at this, it doesn't affect it as much, like I said, the collective efficacy. So why are we putting our power or our thoughts or our emotions in the things we can't control, when our power needs to be placed in our own emotions and getting teachers? And I am the first to admit, I've already admitted it in both of my breakout rooms, I am shoot confetti and flowers and rainbows up your tail person. And I'm going to try to, you know, I'm like wide open and loud. And so, you know, I try not to dwell on those things. And I've been in this school longer than anybody in this school. So I know that those are things that I just can't. You've got to get past those. And I think with the collective efficacy and people banding together and working together and just growing on our words and our thoughts, then you can get to that point of success.
That goes back to the spirit of control. Absolutely. Taking out things that you can't control, but focus on what you can. Absolutely.
Someone in our district says all the time, and it's so true, she says that the children's zip code should not define them. So it doesn't matter if they live in a little small shack somewhere or if they live in a mansion. They have the opportunity to learn while they're at the school. We can't control what's going on in their home life, but we can control what goes on in their school life.
Because I used to tell people, look, you can count on your hands, both hands, how many hours the children are with us, and usually one hand, how many hours they're at home.
All right, so now you're going to go back into a breakout room to learn more about the idea of collective efficacy and how it impacts your work in the building. So you're going to get into groups of 4, and some of you may have more or less, but you will decide who will read a certain piece of article. And the article is linked in your digital agenda. And then you're going to use the text rendering protocol to have your discussion. And I'll show you the text rendering protocol in just a second. And you probably want to take a picture of it so you will have it during your discussion. But you should find the link on the digital agenda. So you're going to take turns using the protocol, and each of you will share a sentence, then you'll share a phrase, and then you'll share a word to make connections with your group. Okay, so this is the protocol that you're going to use, and you may want to take a picture of it. Give you 20 minutes in there, and let me move over. All right, I think we're all ready.
Are you going to pause the recording?
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys. So now that you've had several sources of information regarding collective efficacy and how it relates to teachers, I want you to jot down what you're thinking now. I want you to use, you can put it in your coaching notebook, and I want you to jot down 3 ideas that you have, 2 uses or examples, and then 1 question that you may have, or 1 unresolved area. Using the 3-2-1 protocol. Maybe about 2 minutes. All right, you have about 30 seconds. All right, that was 2 minutes. And when you get back in groups, you could share these with your group members, but if we have anyone who would like to unmute to share either an idea, an example, a question, or in an unresolved area, please feel free to do that.
I'll share. Was part of my research for my action, part of my reading for the action research was about teacher efficacy, and it's based on our Orton Gillingham implementation. So I'm loving that we're doing this today because that'll now become part of my survey. And when I read the article that said that teacher efficacy was so important, I wasn't totally getting it, why that would be as important as it is. But when I see Hattie's rating for it, I realize that is such a critical piece that I need to make sure I touch on. As you know, we've spent all this money to implement Orton Gillingham. We want it to be effective, but I need to create that culture where teachers believe that, yes, they can implement one more thing and do it well. So I've learned a lot today and appreciate this portion.
Okay. And I'm glad that you did mention that with the teacher efficacy, you weren't really seeing the importance of it. So in your digital handout, I did put the link to that entire video in it. It's like a 7-minute video. So if you want to go back and watch it, you have the link to it. Would someone else like to unmute and share?
I think it has to be done at my school. I agree with Denise. This has been very helpful. Now I have a clearer understanding as to why some of the teachers made the negativity that I feel and see. Now I kind of understand why. So I would like to kind of hone in on this as well. Yes.
Nice. You have your why behind it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Have to have
And I've already sent a link to the article that you guys shared today to my principal, along with, before I realized that we were reading an article and we were talking about collective teacher efficacy, I just Googled it and found another article. So I've sent both of those to my principal and asked just for a sit down, just to talk and get her thoughts on it and see what we could do at our school as well. So this has been very beneficial.
She has her next step. Nice. Okay. All right. Anyone else before we go? Before we go to the next slide. All right. So again, this is just a reminder of why collective teacher efficacy is so important. So now that we know what collective efficacy is, how do we begin building it in those that we work with? So as you can see on this slide, collective teacher efficacy is a function of both experiences and environment. So as coaches, we have the ability to influence both. So today we'll take time to do a deep dive into the experiences, and then later on you'll have an opportunity to look at the environment piece, but it'll be at your own leisure. So for experiences, we have 4 sources, and then for the environment, there are 6 enabling conditions. So take a moment to read the 4 main sources. So in a minute, I'm going to go through each one of them with you. And as I'm going through them with you, I want you to kind of think about what are some of the examples or some of the things that you can do in your building with each of these sources. And if you feel the need, you can always unmute after I share one, and you can share with the group any thoughts that you may be having. But you will be placed inside of a breakout room to have a deeper discussion about each one, okay? So under experiences, the first one is the mastery experience. Experience success and attribute that success to causes within their control. When teams experience success and determine the success was because of things in their control, teams begin to expect success. So I want you to think about how do you, or how can we as coaches promote or incorporate mastery experiences in our coaching work to build stronger collective teacher efficacy. How can we use this in our coaching work to build a stronger collective teacher efficacy? And you might want to start jotting down some ideas, or if you feel the need, you could put it in the chat, or if you want to unmute, please feel free to do that, to share any thoughts. And again, you will be going into a breakout room to discuss some of these. So make sure you're jotting down ideas, or definitely share any that you may have. Okay. So the next one is vicarious experiences. See others faced with similar opportunities and challenges performing well. Networking, watching videos, site visits, or reading about it. These are some of the examples. When schools see others perform well, they believe they too can overcome obstacles. So again, thinking about your coaching work, how can you promote or incorporate the vicarious experiences into your coaching work to build stronger collective teacher efficacy? Here they give you a few examples. All right, the next one, social persuasion. Persuaded by credible and trustworthy educators to innovate and overcome challenges, efficacy increases. The more believable the source, the more likely they are to change. Again, thinking about your coaching work, how can you promote or incorporate it into your coaching work? Thinking about collective teacher efficacy. This is the social piece. And the fourth one, the affective states. Feeling the excitement or anxiety associated with an individual's perception of his or her capability or incompetence. The emotional tone of the organization. The emotional tone of the organization. And I want to share something with you. Let's see if I can find it. All right. Affective states, also referred to as the emotional tone of the organization, and emotional and psychological cues, is the fourth and least influential of the sources of efficacy. Affective states can influence how schools interpret and react to the challenges they face. Just as individuals react to stress, so do organizations. Thus, levels of anxiety or excitement add to perceptions of capability or incompetence. For example, schools with high levels of collective teacher efficacy can handle pressure, such as those caused by standardized testing, and continue to function without adverse consequences. With high levels of collective teacher efficacy within a school did not lower stress from teachers' workload, but collective teacher efficacy did partially mediate stress related to student behavior. And if you all want the link to that article, I can definitely put it in the chat. All right, so those are the 4 states. And you're going to go back into the breakout room one last time. And I want you to revisit slide 4, which is the 4 sources, and the link is on your digital agenda. So with your group, I want you to discuss each slide, okay? I want you to also think about examples of each one that you may see in your building. How does your coaching work support these experiences? So what could you do as a coach to help support these type of experiences? Now, during module 1, you worked on the back channel. So if you scroll down under the back channel, and you'll see number 2, it'll say number 2 back channel conversations. It should say something about the 4 main sources of efficacy. As your group is discussing, you may want to begin typing in some of those examples up under each one, okay? Or you could decide to have a timekeeper. You spend a certain amount of time discussing each one, and then you all go into the back channel and start typing. Or you may have a recorder. As you are discussing, your recorder is typing under each column. So you can decide that. But again, in your breakout rooms, you're going to discuss the 4 main sources of efficacy. You're going to put examples up under each one, and then you're going to think about how does your coaching work support these experiences. So any questions before going into your breakout room?
I just say, I see somebody said, please put the link in.
Okay, I'll add the link while you're in the breakout room. Let me create these rooms. Put 3 to 4 people in a breakout room this time. All right, I think that's good. All right, you have about 20 minutes.
Pause the recording.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me set it.
And Denise said she meant the link to the article. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Well,
Okay.
that's the only, yeah.
Okay.
Stop share. Record. And
Ladies, my little boy has to go back to his e-learning at 12:30. Do I have time to go fix lunch real quick?
Yes. We are getting
Okay.
ready to wrap up. So we're near the end, like 2 more slides, but
Okay. All right, so I'll have time to fix on something before 12:30.
Yes. This
Okay.
won't take long at all. Rhythms. You should be heading back. All right, everyone, welcome back. So now that you've had a chance to read a little bit about it, you've had a chance to have a deep discussion with some of the other coaches. I want you to think about back to whenever you put in the chat box a 1, 2, or 3, 1 for teacher efficacy, 2 for collective efficacy, and 3 for collective teacher efficacy. And I want you to just think about, where are you now? Where are you now? How do you build on it? How do you grow in the time of COVID? So now that you have this information, what will you do with it? So now I want you to take about a minute or two, and I want you to set a goal. You can look at your notes from the module. You can go back to the back channel, and in the back channel, I saw where you all had examples of using data, having videos, using coaching cycles, and all of those things. So you could definitely go back to the back channel and look at some of those examples to help create an action plan. So I want you to create at least one goal. Looking at your notes, looking at your reflections, I want you to create at least 2 action steps to support your goal in increasing collective efficacy in your buildings. Give you about 3 minutes to do that. All right, you have about a minute left. All right, 10 seconds. All right. Okay. So just to let you all know that I did put the link to the article in the chat box for you. So you have that. And this one is the environmental piece that I spoke about earlier. You have the 6 enabling conditions, and this PowerPoint is also linked in your agenda with a few notes up under each slide. So please, 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 during your leisure time, look at it. You may want to share it with your leadership team as you begin thinking about collective teacher efficacy. All right.
All right, so you do have module 3, and in module 3, we're going to look at MTSS. The link to the PowerPoint that you're going to use today is on your digital handout, and it depends on how you want to look at it, but you really are going to have to use the notes in the slides, because that's where all of the links and notes are, and it's going to tell you that you can write in your journal, or the very important information is there. Now, this is a pretty heavy PowerPoint, but you can, my suggestion is that you go through and kind of click through all the pieces. For example, in the first activity, it asks you to look at the last 3 years of your SC Ready data. Now, you may or may not have that with you today, or you may have already met with your leadership team and done a lot of work on that. Most people have looked closely at the data. But just kind of go through there and see how you want to break it down. The good part of this is that there are some excellent activities in there for you to do with your leadership team or your teachers. And there's going to be a lot of resources that you can share that have to do with a lot of different things. And so I think that's all I feel like you need to know right now, but I think it's going to be very self-explanatory when you actually download it and take a look. And you know, you may want to just download it and save it for later reference. Anything else, ladies, anything I left out? Oh, there's a back channel. Yes, the back channel. That's going to be very important for our discussion with you next time at the beginning of the day. If you have any, I really want to see your comments about it, and feel free to add anything you would like to that back channel. All these links are in your digital handout. Okay.